Welcome to the Artificial Intelligence Podcast with your host, Dr. Tony Huang. Today, we're with a special guest, Richard. Can you introduce yourself?
Sure. Hey, I'm Richard White, founder, CEO of Fathom. If you're not familiar with Fathom, we're the number one rated and ranked on G2 AI note taker. So for people that are on Zoom, Google Meet, Microsoft Teams meetings, and don't like taking notes, which is basically everyone I've ever met, we have a free solution that uses AI to take notes for you.
Very cool. So I'm in meetings all the time, and note taking is one of the biggest pet peeves of mine. So how is AI changing the way companies are using meeting transcripts?
I think two big ways, right? One is as of kind of like GPT-4, AI can write better notes than almost any human I know, right? And it can do it instantly, right? So it's like 30 seconds, within 30 seconds of meeting ending, we give you like really well written notes. We'll also sync it to the places you want to go. You want it in your CRM, you want it in your inbox, that sort of thing. So that's like one way. That was kind of the frontier when GPT-4 came out, right? About like 18 months ago. And now the frontier, I think, has shifted to now we're actually looking at like taking parts of meetings and shipping them around the organization and thinking about how knowledge kind of management changes and like how knowledge gets disseminated in organizations changes when you've got these bots kind of capturing all the meetings. That's a much bigger topic, but that's, I think, the two biggest ways we're seeing it change.
And then what type of ethical concerns are emerging around AI in the in workplace tools that you're seeing?
Yeah, I mean, I think originally people were just kind of worried. There's a lot of concern about like capturing this, recording these things, whatnot. But I think that's kind of largely melted away once people see the value of like not having to remember, right? Not having to have a perfect memory, right? I think most people actually welcome the idea of all this stuff being captured because you're always afraid of missing something, or you're trying to relay something to someone internally. Hey, I had a call with Dr. Tony, and like he said this really interesting thing, and I think he said this, right? Even when you remember it perfectly, it's not nearly as compelling or as accurate as just giving someone like, hey, here's a clip of them saying this. So I think where it's shifted in terms of ethical concerns are around how does this data get used at the organizational level, or how do companies using this to like train AIs on this data and whatnot? There is probably the potential at some point for you can use this content to make AI workers that replace the folks that you're capturing, sort of thing. We're starting to see stuff like that. It's like you have a sales team, and the sales team you captured, you've got 100 hours your sales team selling. That's more than enough content for an AI agent to basically replicate 80% of that role.
And then how do you measure the effectiveness of these AI powered productivity solutions that are arising, like Microsoft 365 Copilot? There's like the G suite that's powered by Gemini. Like how does one measure like ROI?
I think so. One, I think that's still a challenge for most folks in this industry is measuring ROI. I think most of us still fall back on kind of time saved sort of thing multiplied by cost of that time. I actually think one of the really challenging things about AI products, which is also I think one of the more fun things about building AI products, is it's turned software development, something I've been doing for almost 20 years, back into an art in a way, because there is no empirical measurement for a lot of these things. How do you know that what the AI output gives you is good, right? It's not like you can write a unit test anymore. It requires judgment. And it's like, so we've seen some competitors put out AI notes where the notes are really concise, but like they've lost all the specificity that's important, or they're too verbose such that like you might as well read the transcript. And so I think one of the interesting challenges is we have a whole team that honestly kind of has to do all the eval by hand because there isn't really a replacement for it. And yeah, you could sometimes have GPTs do eval of themselves, like, oh, which thing is better? But at the end of the day, a lot of the stuff on software, it is matters of taste and accuracy requires human intervention still.
And where are you seeing that the biggest challenges is facing AI transcription accuracy today?
You know, we kind of looked at this market 5 years ago when we started this company, and we saw transcription is pretty good across the board. In fact, that was one of the foundational hypotheses behind this company was transcription is pretty good. We think it's a commodity. We think that price is going to go down 99%. And that was why we built this company on the basis of we can be the first people to give this product away for free. And I think it's largely been true. Actually, the cost of transcription in 2020 was about $3 an hour for machine transcription. And now it's trending towards a penny, which is kind of insane. And so now you're kind of looking at the next frontier is actually not really around transcription. It's just like, what can you do within the context window of AIs, right? Like I want to have insights across 10,000 hours of companies' meetings. It's still really hard to do that because you can't fit that into a context window. And so that's kind of where the frontier is today in terms of using transcription at scale at an organization.
I've noticed that like a lot of companies are like kind of racing towards the bottom with their consumption models, and as well as like for language models in general, like the context windows has bloated up past like a million tokens now, as opposed to like maybe 1 to 2,000 tokens, like 2.5 years ago. So you're able to like read in a lot more information from these transcripts and then not lose that fidelity. Is that kind of what you're seeing
Correct.
as well?
Yeah, I think, again, the frontier for us 2 years ago was we can write really good notes for a single meeting. And then, as of like 9 months ago, it's like, okay, we can actually write notes for a group of meetings, right? Oh, we had 10 meetings with this client. Let's give you kind of a high level view of that without having to watch them, right? Or give you a GPT interface. You can interact and ask questions about this deal, over 10 hours of content without having to sit through 10 hours of meetings. And we just continue to see that kind of move out, right? Now it's like, okay, now we're looking at how do we get to 50 hours, 100 hours, that sort of thing of content and give you kind of insights on it there. And that's where I think it started to get really, really interesting at an organizational level, not just at an IC level, right? I think the IC use case, has been solved on note taking, and now the IC frontier is can you get, yeah, we can give you really accurate action items. Now the frontier there is can the AI actually do those action items for you? So it's kind of interesting on two dimensions. We're pushing into how can AI do more of the work for you as an IC? And if you're an executive or a manager, how can AI keep giving you a larger and larger aperture view of what's happening across your work? Because I think it's really exciting. Like as an executive, we're all expected to be kind of omniscient, right? Omnipresent. Like we're expected to know everything that's happening in all the teams below us. We all know that's not actually possible in reality, but at least not today. I think we're moving to this world where like the right moments from your team's meetings, whether it's internal or client facing, will get bubbled to you in a way that you can really feel like, oh, I can sleep at night because I know, if anything bad is happening, the AI is monitoring everything and surfacing up to me.
Yeah, I've noticed that like transcription is cool, like just to do like the note taking and summarization or like a to-do list. But I find that like being able to take multiple meetings of like the same topic or like maybe like a year over year like summary or like analyzing trends of what's going on. That's of like high interest to a lot of like upper level execs, just to kind of see how things are trending or like where things are going towards, rather than just taking individual notes. That to me has a lot of value. I've also noticed that like people are kind of coupling these transcripts with like other actions down the workflow. Like for instance, like if you talk about like like coding, for instance, like you talk about like a to-do list for a project, the AI could write down like a to-do list, and then that could be piped into, say, like a coding assistant that can kick off the work. I think that right there has a ton of value when you start coupling these other like agentic tools to this transcript to do like more work as part of that workflow. Is that what you're kind of seeing in?
100%. Yeah, I think the only thing I would add to that is I think there's a lot of industry opportunities at like the mid-level management area for, one of the features we just put out recently that has gotten really good response is like we can set you up with alerts. And these alerts can be kind of semantic and it can be like, hey, let me know anytime a salesperson got a question from a customer they didn't handle well. It could be that open-ended, right? That's kind of, it's not, doesn't have to be based on any sort of keyword. And you can imagine piping that directly to a sales manager. And so that allows you to do a lot of like near real time. And this stuff will get to you within an hour sort of thing or less. A lot of like, a lot of near real time reactive kind of workflows and processes that help rescue deals, help rescue customers, that sort of thing. We're seeing kind of a lot of excitement around that.
And then, like, how do enterprises address data privacy when they're using these like AI meeting agents or AI meeting assistants?
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of our market today is kind of like SMB to mid-market. I think that's because I think a lot of the enterprises are either much earlier in their AI journey, at least from using vendors, or they're still at the state trying to do everything internally, right? And I think there's a real open question for me about what is the future of AI in enterprise? Is it going to be enterprises, you know, hoarding all the data and not making sure nothing leaves, and they do everything on-prem again, almost, right? Whether that's internal tools or vendors they deploy on-prem, or will they use the same kind of tools that the other 85% of the world is using, where they don't have the same sort of strict requirements around data transport. So I think it's a really interesting open question in the next couple of years. We have consistently seen over the last couple of years, I would tell you for our business 2 years ago, it's mostly SMB. This year, we're seeing much more mid-market being like, hey, we're prioritizing investments in AI tools. And I kind of think we'll get 2, 3 years from now and enterprise will do the same. But I think they obviously have a lot of concerns around data training and privacy and that sort of stuff that they're still trying to work through.
And then like right now, what type of like new AI trends are you seeing that are shaping the productivity software industry?
Yeah, I mean, I think we touched on it a little bit, which is like pushing in not just from like again, at the IC level, not just capturing content, but actually being a true assistant, right? And actually doing the work afterwards, right? Drafting the follow-up email, writing the SOW. And then at the executive and mid-level management layer, I think a lot of the opportunities are around like very accurate and effective dissemination of information, right? Meetings are the way we historically disseminate information in the org outside of written documents in Slack, right? And I think if you look at most orgs, probably the majority of that distribution of information and context is in meetings, but it's not the most effective way to do it, right? You end up with people in meetings that don't need to be there for most of it, people that are miss a meeting. And so it's kind of fun in that you can kind of now time shift a lot of these things. And it's like, great, let's not put Sally in who's running whatever, as the head of marketing. Let's take her out of half her meetings and give her a condensed summary of those of the highlights that she needs to know about. And so I think everyone now is thinking about building AI first orgs where we've got higher productivity with less headcount. And I think a big part of that is how do we use AI to make much more efficient communication distribution within our organizations.
And then in relation to like the transcript and like having Gen AI analyze this transcript, how is like generative AI affecting collaboration as a whole, and also like with the workflow tools associated
Yeah,
with
I
them?
mean, what I think, you know, deriving things from transcripts is probably one of the most straight up the fairway kind of use cases of modern LLMs. They're really good at it, right? Unlike, finance and math and stuff where it's like gets a little iffy at times, right? But it does a really good job of that. I think the transcriptions themselves also continue to improve. We think a lot about transcription quality, which I think is kind of ironic because people are kind of like, well, what does it matter? Because it's getting summarized anyways. But it's, the old phrase garbage in, garbage out sort of thing. There consistently is improvements in transcription. I think where we've seen the biggest improvements the last couple of years, really the last year, is outside of quote unquote unaccented English, which basically means like, white Western style American English, right? Used to be if you weren't speaking like I am right now, your transcription quality fell off. That's greatly improved, which I also think from like an inclusivity perspective is great, right? So that's one big change. I think we're also been experimenting with like how do we use AI to basically give hints to transcription. So like when you sign up for Fathom, one of the things we do is we send an AI out to your website. It actually crawls your whole website. It figures out the vocabulary of your company, and it informs the AI transcribing your meetings of this vocabulary. Because if you think about it, all of us have jargon and industry terms. And so what your business might talk about versus, some very different business can't possibly just be using the same transcription engine, right? It can though if we give it the right vocabulary. And so that's we've seen also been a huge unlock. So I think there's like I think a lot about quality, as I mentioned earlier, about the quality of AI output. And so it's directly tied to picking the right LMs, picking the right prompts, but also making sure you've got really, really good and accurate transcripts, and then putting all that together in a pipeline that's pretty fast and efficient.
Yeah, I remember playing around with the speech to text models out there, like the most famous ones, like OpenAI's Whisper.
Yep.
When that came out, like that took off because it was just, it was the first like open source speech to text model. I did remember that like it didn't handle accents very well, so like Southern accents were really difficult. I think now that it has improved quite a bit with a lot of fine tuning. But yeah, like I think the key to success is really the accents, because a lot of folks don't talk with like a neutral accent. They have like a Southern or like a
Yep.
Midwest accent or something like that. So like it's nice to see like these speech to text models adopting accents.
It's
Um,
really impressive on that, and also just how good it's gotten at also just non-English, right? Like, and also meetings where you're switching between languages, which is very common, right? Like, I think sometimes here in the US, we kind of think we don't think about that, right? But if you go to Europe, you go to APAC, like you'll see that. So, yeah, it's really impressive how much has been improved in such a short period of time. So I meet people that are like, oh yeah, I tried some AI note taker, and I'm like, when did you try it? And they're like, oh, 2023. I'm like, this has almost nothing in common with what happened in 2020. It's that big of a change, right? What used to take 10 years of progress now happens in 10 months.
yeah, the Gen AI world has been like just accelerating so fast. For instance, it would take you a couple years to build a product, and now with generative AI, you could build it in like couple days to a couple weeks. So like the speed is very quick to get off the ground. And I'm a big supporter of like speech to text just because like I don't for in my own personal life, I don't type anymore. I use a lot of like the speech to text just because it's faster. It's a
Yeah.
lot more accurate and it just lightens like my workload. Especially if I'm in like meetings and I have to like type up things. I don't have to do that anymore. I can just say things out loud. So it's so like having tools like speech to text is a huge game changer. What type of like barriers are you seeing for like widespread adoption of AI meeting transcripts in like larger organizations?
I mean, one is like a social norm, right? Like, I think we tend to focus a lot on client-facing, prospect-facing, customer-facing meetings, right? Those are kind of quasi-public meetings anyway, so I think there's a lot less resistance to recording. But obviously, if you're having a confidential one-on-one with your boss and you're talking about the CEO, maybe negatively, right? We're still figuring out like how do we do this and feel safe in those spaces, right? When we're capturing them. I mean, I think one of the pushes we're seeing now that we're starting to embrace in our own product is giving you, the user, the person in the meeting, decision about like what do you want to be captured? Do you just want us to capture a transcript and notes? Do you want us just to capture the notes as opposed to capturing the video, the audio, the notes, right? Like, and so we're seeing a lot with internal use cases where that's more interesting. Folks are feel safer. I also think there's kind of some fun kind of like psychological things you may not think about where it's like if I show up to a sales meeting, like got my best shirt on, I'm looking good, I'm looking in the camera, I got my lighting. I might be jumping on one with my boss. I may look like crap. And maybe I just don't want that recorded, not because I'm worried about anything to say. I just don't want to look, I don't want it memorialized anywhere that looked like, I just rolled out of bed that day. So these are things I wouldn't have thought of getting to this business until we started talking to users and realizing like, oh yeah, there's a lot of like real kind of just everyday human kind of concerns here. Back to your point though, I think the big barrier I think a lot about is like to really do any of these roles that an AI note taker does, like Fathom, it's actually not just, there's a huge pipeline of AIs that actually we bring to bear on any use case, whether it's writing notes, finding action items, updating CRM. You can get an okay version just using GPT-4 or O4 or whatever. But really, there's like a whole pipeline. We usually will use in any given use case models from Anthropic and Gemini and OpenAI, and it's like a different tool for each part of that process. And so that I think has made it like it's now this whole discipline around how do you leverage the right AI, right LLMs for the right part of the pipeline. And I also think there's a interesting strategy if you're building AI products, it's kind of flipped software development on its head, where you don't work from what's possible. You don't work from like what you want to build, you work from what's possible. And the rate of change is so fast that we have what I call the Jenga model of development, where it's like, you play Jenga, right? You push on a block. If you get resistance, you like try a different block, right? And we see that a lot too. There's oftentimes like you could probably like, hey, we can make this feature work with modern LLMs, but it might take us 6 months to really like brute force it. And then those 6 months, there's probably a new LLM that comes out that makes it, we get it done in 3 days, sort of thing. And so a lot of what you have to do, I think, as a modern AI company is figure out where is the like not you don't want to be on the bleeding edge. Like you don't want to be on the complete frontier because it's too expensive and too slow. The LMs are. Where's the sweet spot of like, okay, yeah, let's productize this use case now.
And then in your opinion, like which industries are you seeing that is experiencing the most rapid growth in like AI powered productivity tools?
I mean, obviously, like a lot of software companies are on the forefront of this because they're dogfooding a lot of their own products. They're trying to build AI products themselves. I think one of our internal goals is getting to 100 million in revenue with less than 150 employees. And we're kind of building into that because, we started only 5 years ago. We're seeing companies come the other direction into that, trying to get really lean and really efficient. I see a lot of software companies starting there, but I also see a lot of agencies as well, a lot of client services companies and stuff like that that are also, again, wherever there's companies that I think have a lot of like human intensive processes, meetings, document creation, you name it. That's where I think we see that there's a lot of opportunity. So you're looking at, knowledge work, client services, agencies, software companies, et cetera.
Can you tell me a little bit more about the platform that you've built, Fathom?
Yeah. So we started 5 years ago. We started with this premise that no one likes taking notes, and we're going to start with solving the problem for the people in the meeting, right? Make it so that meetings are less stressful because you don't have to take notes. The AI is there. It's capturing the meeting. It's making sure you didn't miss anything. And also makes it really easy for you to like tell your boss, tell someone else, hey, here's a 30-second clip of Dr. Tony explaining this thing. You should watch it. That's where we started, and that's still where, hundreds of thousands, literally people per day use Fathom is just capture their meetings. What we've been moving into in the last 2 years is now we have another product that we sell to managers and executives that takes all those meetings being captured across their team and consolidates that into one repository so that you can build integrations, AI workflows, gather insights, get the alerts I was talking about before driven to your middle level management. And that's kind of, I think, where a lot of the frontier is for us and where we get really excited about what we're building is in that space for, again, for those executives and middle of managers who are expected to be omnipotent about things. How do we help give them the tools to sleep at night and not worry about what their teams may or may not be saying on meetings with clients, customers, or just to themselves?
And then like what major like advances are you foreseeing in like the AI powered productivity space in like the next couple years?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's two big things we talk about. I have this contrarian take where I think I kind of talk about the future of meetings is magical. Like I actually think everyone likes to crap on meetings, right? And like, no one likes having meetings. No one likes being in meetings where they don't need to be there for the content, right? Like this could have been an email or I didn't need 80% of this. And no one likes meetings because the amount of work that meetings generate, right? It's like, oh, we had 2 hour long meeting. It was actually a fantastic meeting, but now I have 8 hours of work to do. And so I look a lot about how AI is going to basically help us on both those dimensions, right? It's going to help do the work, right? So I'm imagining a future very soon where you get off the meeting, like I said, and not only have we captured the notes and action items, the AI has actually done half the action items already for you, right? And it's maybe half filled out the other ones. Oh, you need SOW. I didn't make the SOW, but I made it 80% done. Please edit and fill in these fields. So that's one direction. And then the other direction is, I think, this like, how do we get to a place where you don't have to go to all these meetings. It'll just, you almost imagine having an agent that's out there listening at every meeting in the org and pulling back things that are important to you and whatever your function is, right? Oh, you're, running a certain project. You'd want to know whenever they get project reference elsewhere in the org, right? Or about adjacent projects that might impact yours. And so imagine this world where you're getting kind of almost like your own personal podcast every week about what's happening across the org. And that's how you stay up to date instead of lots of all hand meetings and passing paper around, if you will. So I think that kind of I think those two things combined end up in this place where we're like, great, the humans get to show up to work. We get to have the meetings we want to be in. We get to have really in-depth, high-power conversations because we're not doing all the rest of the stuff.
And like how can companies balance these like automation benefits while still maintaining the human touch in the workplace communications?
I mean, I think we do this pretty well, or we strive to, which is like I think when done right, what all your kind of AI optimizations and workflows and enablement should do is take away the lowest value work for the humans in your company, right? Which allows them to do better jobs. So I'll give you an example. Our support team now, we've always invested heavily in having really good support. I think it's a differentiator that most companies don't invest enough in. A year ago, we had 0% of our messages being answered by AI. Now we got 50%. And that's allowed our support team now to spend, we've now actually, our support ticket ratio is way higher. And so we now are getting our reps the time and space to be able to answer the questions more thoughtfully. And I think the same thing you're going to see in sales, customer success, any customer facing role. Great. The obvious road stuff is taken over by the AI. So great. Now we can really, we don't even need junior folks. We're gonna have nothing but like senior solution engineers for you to talk to because we can afford to do that. And you actually, as a customer get an overall net positive experience.
And then what like advice would you give to like orgs just starting to integrate AI into their productivity workflows?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the big things I would say is I would probably tap someone in my org, maybe it's the CIO, maybe it's a new group, to almost be in charge of evaluating these tools. I think one of the most challenging things for a lot of companies is like there's now so many vendors out there. And as I said, the challenging part is you can't just look at someone's feature grid and be like, yeah, we want that one, not that one, right? The unfortunate thing is you need to look at reviews online. You need to do if you're large enough, do your own kind of testing to figure out how good is the output of this vendor. There's a lot of great early stage companies also doing stuff. There's also a lot of early stage companies that are just absolutely producing crap, right? But something comes out of the AI, right? And so I think that's the thing that I think a lot of companies are struggling with is like their whole vendor evaluation process has been upended because now it's so easy for people to make some output. And so now we have to turn into like, how do we evaluate how good that output is?
And for the viewers at home who are interested in learning more, what's the best way to contact you?
Yeah, if you're interested in checking out Fathom, again, it's completely free. You can go sign up our website in 2 minutes, fathom.video. If you'd like to reach out to me, the only social media I'm on is LinkedIn. You can message me on there. And I look forward to your feedback on Fathom, your questions about AI, and just riffing on anything in the space.
Well, Richard, thanks so much for being on the show. I learned so much about productivity.
Yeah, thanks for having me. This has been awesome.
And for the viewers at home, stay curious.